In just 9 minutes, get the most shocking revelations from Joe Rogan's 3-hour interview with Mike Benz, aired on February 12th, 2025. From media manipulation to AI censorship and secret government influence, this summary uncovers the hidden forces shaping our world. Stay till the end. You won't believe what's really going on behind the scenes. Here are the key takeaways from the podcast. Takeaway 1. Governments influence media more than you think. Mike Benz reveals how the U.S. government, through organizations like USAID, funds investigative journalism projects worldwide. But instead of independent reporting, these projects often serve government interests. The goal is to push certain narratives while silencing alternative viewpoints. The U.S. government funds media organizations under the term independent media, but these outlets are not truly independent. Some of these media projects influence foreign governments by targeting political figures with exposés that favor U.S. interests. For example, the Panama Papers leak exposed many international figures, but the U.S. government remained largely untouched despite its deep global financial networks. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 2. The power of censorship is real. Governments and intelligence agencies use sophisticated technology to control information online. They work with social media platforms to suppress or boost content based on political objectives. AI-powered tools are now used to track and categorize speech on social media in real time. Funding from the U.S. government goes toward organizations that define what is misinformation and actively censor it. For example, during COVID-19, posts questioning official narratives were flagged, suppressed, or removed, even when they later turned out to be true. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 3. Social media is a weapon in global politics. The U.S. has used social media campaigns to influence political events in other countries. Programs like Zunzuneo in Cuba were designed to appear as organic social networks, but were actually funded by the U.S. government to promote anti-regime sentiment. These campaigns often start with non-political content like sports and entertainment to gain followers before introducing political messages. Social media has been instrumental in organizing protests, regime changes, and swaying elections. For example, similar tactics were used during the Arab Spring, where social media was leveraged to fuel uprisings. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 4. Governments manipulate the financial system to control speech. Governments influence which news organizations and social media platforms receive advertising money. Organizations deemed to spread misinformation are quietly removed from ad networks, making it financially impossible for them to survive. The U.S. government has played a direct role in pressuring tech companies to demonetize certain content. This financial blacklisting forces platforms and news outlets to either comply with government narratives or risk financial ruin. For example, many independent media sites critical of government policies suddenly lost ad revenue, while mainstream outlets continued to thrive. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 5. U.S. foreign aid is often used for political control. USAID, an agency meant to provide humanitarian aid, is frequently involved in funding political projects that align with U.S. interests. Governments receiving U.S. aid are often pressured to make policy changes in return. This aid is sometimes used to destabilize governments that do not align with U.S. foreign policy. Local activists and journalists in foreign countries are funded to support pro-U.S. narratives. For example, Ukraine has received billions in aid, much of which is tied to specific policy changes that favor U.S. strategic interests. We're halfway through the video. Thank you for sticking with us this far. If you're enjoying it, please give us a thumbs up and share it in your WhatsApp groups. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to comment below. To see more videos like this, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Now let's continue with the video. Takeaway 6. There's a playbook for regime change. The U.S. has a pattern of supporting opposition figures in foreign countries, providing funding, media support, and legal backing to weaken governments they oppose. When a government does not cooperate, economic pressure, media scandals, and protests are often triggered to push for leadership change. This approach has been used in regions such as Latin America, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe. Governments that do not align with U.S. policy often find themselves facing sudden anti-corruption investigations or mass protests. For example, various leaders in South America and Eastern Europe have been forced to resign after US-backed media campaigns expose them. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 7. The judiciary is not always neutral. In some countries, prosecutors and judges receive direct or indirect support from U.S. government agencies. Certain judicial systems are used to target political opponents of the U.S. while protecting allies. High-profile investigations are sometimes used as tools to remove leaders who do not align with U.S. policy. Legal systems are also used to create fear among dissenters, making them hesitant to challenge authority. For example, the legal troubles faced by leaders in Brazil and Ukraine had strong connections to U.S.-backed judicial movements. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 8. The intelligence community is more active than you realize. Agencies like the CIA and NSA have a long history of covert operations, but now they often work through organizations like USAID to maintain plausible deniability. These agencies fund media outlets, nonprofits, and research centers that push specific narratives. The goal is to shape public opinion both in the U.S. and abroad. Even domestic politics can be influenced by these intelligence-backed campaigns. For example, many of the narratives during major political events, like elections or scandals, can be traced back to intelligence-funded media sources. Now let's move to the next takeaway. Takeaway 9. Technology is being used to shape public opinion. The use of AI and machine learning for narrative control is increasing rapidly. Social media algorithms are manipulated to promote certain viewpoints while suppressing others. The intelligence community partners with private companies to track and influence conversations at scale. These tools allow for real-time control over what information spreads and what disappears. For example, if a political movement gains traction online, it can be slowed or accelerated depending on how the algorithms are tuned. Now let's move to the last takeaway. Takeaway 10. There's big money in crisis management. Governments and private corporations profit from managing global crises, from pandemics to wars. When a crisis happens, governments allocate massive budgets, which often go to private contractors. These funds are sometimes misused, benefiting a small group of insiders while the public bears the cost. Large-scale disasters create financial windfalls for certain industries, from pharmaceuticals to defense contractors. For example, COVID-19 saw an unprecedented transfer of wealth, with major corporations gaining billions while small businesses collapsed. Here is a brief introduction about Mike Benz. Mike Benz is a former U.S. State Department official and the executive director of the Foundation for Freedom Online, FFO. He specializes in investigating censorship, government influence over social media, and the role of NGOs in global politics. With deep insights into U.S. foreign policy, information warfare, and media manipulation, Benz has exposed how institutions like USAID shape narratives both abroad and domestically. His work focuses on defending free speech and uncovering hidden government agendas in the digital age. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this summary of the Joe Rogan Experience podcast with Mike Benz informative. If you're interested in learning more about these topics, I encourage you to watch the full podcast on YouTube. If you enjoyed watching this video, please leave a like below and share this video in your WhatsApp groups. You can also discuss about this video by commenting below. To get more such videos in your timeline, press the subscribe button below.